All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Acceptable Accuracy Podcast. This is Tyler,
And I'm Philip.
and welcome to part two of our two-part series on range electronics. Last week, we went over electronic ear pro, red dots, shot timers, and more, and practice score. And then we realized it went a lot longer than we were expecting. So we're like, hey, let's go ahead and do two parts instead because it was already an hour and a half. So we didn't want to do a 3-hour episode or do 2 hours and it'd be completely lame. So, Phil, do you have any thoughts before we get started?
So I do have some thoughts. I was specifically thinking about this from range tech perspective last time, and we kind of touched on this a bit, but the way we're at with technology today in firearms, I get excited about the future, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I want my integrated heads up display in my glasses, like telling me my round count, like in my rifle, right?
Yeah.
Like that'd be kind of cool, like Call of Duty stuff, right? Like because you always
Mm-hmm.
look at all these movies that are science fiction, and then a lot of that science fiction stuff ends up becoming science fact. I swear,
Mm-hmm.
like engineers are like, oh hey, I wonder if I could do that, right? Like I want my Call of Duty heads up display. Make it happen. Come on,
Yeah.
Activision.
Or even the Halo round count on your gun. Aren't they trying to do that right now of like electronic guns where you can see the round count in the end, except for one in the chamber, apparently? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like Grantham did the video on somebody made like a DMR version of the rifle from Halo, and it actually had a round
Mm.
count that was based on. I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but it's based on like the location of the spring or something. I don't remember. It was
Hmm.
done by magnets or something like that. But it was kind of cool because it actually would tell you what the round count is. Now the round count was actually incorrect because I think it would couldn't handle as many bullets as the actual or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, I want my
What do
heads
you
up
do
display.
about well, I'm curious, like what would you do if extended mags there as well?
Right. Like I don't know, do you put
Like
it
a
in
third party
like
extendo.
right. And then the other thing is too is if you even put in like a third party extended mag, or you put it like you have to have some kind of like chip that would interface with the firearm to get that round count, right? And then even
Mm-hmm.
then, like who's to say that you haven't downloaded it by a couple rounds? Like with AR mags, there's some people download instead of 30, they put in 29, right? Just to make it seem
Mm-hmm.
easier, right?
If it can hold 30, you should be able to do 30, Philip. What are you talking about?
I do 29, bro.
I'm kidding. I do
Like my
29 as
odd like
well.
my odd numbers.
Yeah, some people like to do 28. I'm like, all right, come on, man. Or
But yeah,
27.
and I think of other like wild range technology, and some of it actually kind of like died off too. There was like a firearm that was maybe 4 to 5 years ago. I forget what it was called, but it had it wasn't the firearm itself, but it had a sighting system that you would basically you would more or less like select the target with the crosshairs or something like that, and then it would figure out the trajectory for you, and all you had to do is like pull the trigger. So
Wow.
it was crazy, and it was really expensive and kind of bulky at the time. But I do know that there's some range finding equipment that'll help you figure out like dope and that kind of stuff on the fly using some technology that was developed by a few people. Vortex is actually
Hmm.
one of them that they made for military use. It's super expensive right now, but everything will come down, right?
My only concern with as we continually innovate with these range tech or range electronics is when an EMP actually happens, or
Right,
or someone third party or the government is able to control our firearms and just stop it from shooting.
right.
I hate
Well,
that I'm even thinking this way because I do not consider myself a conspiracy theorist. And yet I'm thinking, I don't know, man. I feel like 2020 just messed me up or opened
y-
my eyes, I guess.
well, yes, and I think about that as well too. Even from like a red dot perspective, like we talked about last month, is
Hmm.
that that's susceptible to any kind of electronic interference potentially, right? Like from in the form of an EMP. Again, likelihood of that happening in our generation pretty low, but you never know. And that's people joke, well, that's why I use etched reticle like an LPVO or whatever, or that's why I
Hmm.
use iron sights in my pistol. Blah blah blah. Well, I can always take it off,
Eh,
right, and go back
yeah,
to iron.
exactly. Take it off. It's
Yep.
backup. It's there for a reason. It's fine.
But the other thing I think about too is if you think about a vehicle, right? There are your standard transition vehicles or like your manual transmission, right? That's both the same term. And then your automatic
Hmm.
transmission, right? But you also have like steering now that's all electronic and that kind of stuff. Like what's to say that red dots have become extremely acceptable on pistols? A lot of people shoot them, even older people that have like bad vision, like, hey, this helps out a lot. What's to stop from doing a electronic trigger, right? Where that electronic trigger is dialable, and I know there's dialable triggers today. You can determine springs, weights, and all that kind of stuff. But what if you could get an electronic trigger that like literally broke like glass every single time in a pistol? Because it's one of the biggest complaints about pistol shooting for especially new people is that getting used to a really bad trigger. And you could remedy that potentially by having an electronic trigger instead of a firearm. Now, again, you're relying on battery and what happens if your battery goes out and all that stuff. So people are going to yell and scream and say, no, that's a bad idea. But same thing
Hmm.
applies to your red dot. What happens when your red dot battery goes out?
Because that definitely has never happened to me before at a USPSA match.
No.
I
So,
feel like it happens every time. Well, actually, now that I think about it, so for those who don't know, I use a Holliston 507C ACSS model, which has that
whoa, whoa, whoa,
massive
whoa,
L.
whoa. That's the one I
So,
use.
yes, so do you. But the difference is I carry mine every single day.
Sure.
So because of that, they even have this in their manual that if you carry it every day, or I think maybe not their manual, but like Reddits or discussion boards, whatever, basically say if you do it every day, your dot's gonna die or in about a month or so. So actually, now I think about it, it makes sense that it dies at USPSA because usually it dies on me. So I put a new battery in, I carry
Right.
it, then it dies at you because it is pretty much 30 days later. Oh my
You need
goodness, I just
to,
realized that.
yeah, you need to like switch your battery swapping schedule to like 2 weeks prior or something like that.
Yeah, no kidding. That or no, that's my carry gun. I ain't changing my carry gun. Well, actually, I mean, I will be gone for the next week and a half anyway, so I definitely will not be carrying, unfortunately. So I'm gonna be
Only
breaking
in
my
your
own
heart.
rules. Yeah, I'll be going to a foreign country and I won't be able to carry there. So I guess I will be good for the next USPSA match. So
Yeah, that's a
actually, I'll
good point.
just turn off the dot. There's no reason to keep it on.
I always turn
So
mine off when I put it back in the bag, even though I know that it's got like the motion sensing where it turns itself off. But like, I don't.
it's so sensitive, though.
Yeah, and I haven't tested how sensitive that is either. Like, if I walk in my house and it like shakes the case that it's in, like, is it gonna wake it up?
It will.
Maybe,
If
maybe
it,
not. So,
I've so I've had times where I put my gun down, my holstered gun on my bedside table, and I've like tapped the table. It was fine, but I shook it a hair. I shook it a little bit. It turned the dot right on.
well,
So,
and that brings another interesting point too with like dots. Like we use batteries today, right? Like, and I know there
hmm.
Holliston's already got some out there that charge, some capacitors on the red dot and it lasts for a good amount of time, right? Like the same technology could potentially be applied to electronic trigger. You're looking probably a little more like power requirements. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, electronic engineer. But if you have some kind of way of self charging where you never really had to worry about it,
Hmm.
just a
I don't
thought.
know.
Again, would I trust my life to an electronic trigger? Probably not.
No, no, I wouldn't.
But I trust it to
But
an electronic red dot. So, all
I
right. You want to
do.
dip?
But I also have a backup.
That yeah,
So
that's true. Backup irons. All right, man. You want to dip into the four different technologies that we're going to cover today?
yeah, for sure. So, do you want to start or me?
You want to rock scissors paper for it?
Sure.
Okay, ready?
So,
Here we go.
uh,
You're gonna tell me what you got though. We're gonna say it at the same time. Ready? Here we go. One, two, three. Paper.
paper. Are you serious?
I'm just kidding. Go ahead, start, Tyler.
But we both said paper.
That's fine. Age before
Uh,
beauty, man. Come on, let's go.
you're older than me,
I know.
so
That's why I
you're
said
going first.
it. Go ahead.
Oh my goodness. All right, so first on my list would be cameras. As weird as it is, I know we live in an age where social media is rampant, and we live, unfortunately, in the TikTok age and Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and now everyone seems to have a camera. I just got my monthly. magazine from USPSA, even though I didn't even sign up for it, and yet I still get them monthly. And on the front cover is some dude who has an Insta 360 camera on his hat, which is kind of cool to see because I have that exact same camera. So we have buddies who use a GoPro, they'll use it, and multiple different options for cameras. I use an Insta 360 camera, which unfortunately is from China. But after doing research, I it was really hard to beat the tiny little size of that thing. I can't remember how heavy it is, but that thing's tiny. It's like the size of a thumb, or at least the actual camera itself, because it comes in a charging case that's the size of a GoPro that you can record in it, gives it a longer battery life, but you can take it right off and put it on your hat, put on like a necklace, and it is waterproof, which is really cool. I did test that because I did jump in Lake Michigan with it just to see how it did, and it worked
Oh, cool.
flawlessly. hmm The water was cold because it was like March. Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
cold. It was probably like
Yeah.
45 degrees in there. But all that to say, I originally got the Insta 360 camera so I could post on social media. I will admit that, which
Well,
ironically enough, I'm not really on social media right now.
if it's not on social media, it didn't happen,
Yeah,
right?
but that is true. But but it's really cool to have because since it's on my because there's a big difference between having it mounted on my head versus on my chest because before getting the Insta 360 camera, I actually got this. I think it was like a I can't remember the brand, but it was a chest mounted, like you could attach it to a plate carrier, yeah, and you'll mount your and you can put your phone on there. The purpose of it really is more so you can have a place for your phone and you can look down and look at a map or a GPS, but you are able to record to because there's like a area so you can your camera is free and you're able to record. And I tried it out, but it was way too low. You could see the bottom of my hands, you couldn't really see where I was looking at. And of course, it'll only move left and right as my body moves, not my head.
Right.
Whereas having something on my head, it's really cool because at the last USPSA match, it was my first time using my Insta 360 camera. It was really cool to review the footage and I could see the tiny little micro movements. I know exactly because I'm able to see my targets and I'm able to see how my head moves. And I'm also able to see how when I'm target transitioning, look at that. I over I guess over transition to where I didn't lead with my eyes, and because of that, I get to my target and I'm shaking right back to left because
Mm,
I didn't leave with my eyes. So it's the tiny little things that I'm able to see. Hey, I know I need to work on that. Hey, looks like I missed a target. Hey, I can see I'm second guessing myself. Or it's just really cool. I don't know. I'm able to review my own footage and review my shooting because now I'm actually looking at it with a first person point of view. So
yeah,
it's just really
I
cool.
I have like a small action camera that I used at Zombie last year and the year before that, and it was okay, but it is a lot of extra weight in the front of your hat. I'm
Oh
not a huge
yeah.
hat guy. I have a big old head, so I look like somebody took a bowling ball and wrapped it in a hat. So I don't like wearing a hat necessarily. But man, I'm really tempted to get one of these things because they are so lightweight and there is a
I
lot to
think
be
it's worth it,
learned.
man.
Yep, there's a lot to be learned from like reviewing the footage that you've done. And honestly, at like a super high level, those guys are recording themselves and reviewing that footage because they can, like you said, they can find those micro movements, find that time to pick up. Like honestly,
Mhm.
really at any level, you can improve your stuff at it. But
Oh
you
yeah.
know, at some point, you can only diagnose what you're doing wrong in the heat of the moment so well because you're trying to do a bunch of stuff. Like, you're trying to draw the gun, aim the
Mhm.
gun, squeeze the trigger, making sure that you don't move while you're doing that, planning out your next move, all that kind of stuff, right? It's really difficult to try to also diagnose yourself at the same time. And you can record yourself from
Exactly.
afar, and we do that as well too. And I think having both perspectives, both from your perspective and from your outside perspective, is really important.
Mhm.
Like,
I
for
agree.
me, I find that I have a lot of delay on like, my target transitions need to be improved, and I have a lot
Hmm.
of movement delay that I could be better at. And I have to figure out from my personal perspective, from my body mechanics, from my body size, because I am taller, I have advantages. I can take like I can take advantage of that height, but I am also more mass and more like length to move, right? So
Hmm.
no excuse because freaking Nils, man, like he's an amazing shooter and he's a tall dude. He's like 6'3" or something like that. I don't know how tall he is. I don't keep that much track
So
on those
there
guys,
was
but
a, oh man, this was probably 2 or 3 years ago. You and I, we were training for a Wolverine 5K stage, and it was hilarious because I had my phone on a tripod record us, and you could actually see. For those who don't know, I'm 5'8". Philip is like 7 feet tall.
at
So
least,
I'm kidding. He's what do you say, like 6'6"?
yeah.
So you are nearly a foot taller than I am. And oddly enough, we have very similar torso lengths. I so
I walk around
Phil
on
has
stilts.
yes, Phil has very long legs. But all that to say, when you watch this video of Philip and I shooting, well, really, I was shooting and Philip was following me with the shot timer. I was taking 5 steps for like his every one or two.
Right.
And, like, my buddies were watching that video and they said, "Tyler, did you know that?" I'm like, "No, I didn't even notice it," because I'm just shooting. I'm like, "Oh," when you review the footage, I saw, I'm like, "Holy cow, I really am taking a bunch of more steps."
Well, and that's one thing I'm really guilty of too is that when I'm shooting a USPSA stage, when I'm shooting it, I tend to like maybe move in smaller movements than I should be, and I don't take advantage of my body type. And I think subconsciously
Mhm,
I do that because I'm watching other people like do practice through the stages or shoot the stages, and I'm like, oh,
mhm.
okay, that's how I'm supposed to step. When realistically, I have a lot more distance that I can make. Now, there's a
Yeah,
lot to be said too with the momentum and that kind of stuff. There's a whole, I'm sure,
it's true.
yeah, there's a
Yeah,
whole science behind that as well too. And USPSA and any kind of practical shooting is not doesn't draw the money and time like a professional swimmer or basketball player or whoever does, where they're like
no,
slowing them down to like the millionth like of a second. Like, hey,
yeah.
if you twitched just this way, you could get 0.00005 seconds better.
If you just shaved your legs, you'd do way faster.
That's right.
But, well, that's why I even appreciate guys like I think of Lucas Botkin from T-Rex Arms, how he made a video, or I think it was actually a social media video, where he talked about how he did a USPSA competition a little while back and he was surrounded by masters and grandmasters. And he would walk a stage his way, and then when he watched these other higher level shooters shoot it, he's like, "Oh, I should do it that way." And then he realized he was bumbling it, it was messing him up. Then he was like, "No, I need to stop trying, like, yes, I want to be a better shooter, but I
Right.
need to get to that level first. So I need to do it my way, the way I'm comfortable with it, the way that I work, because he is a great shooter. He's a better shooter than I am.
Oh yeah.
So for him, he's like, I'll just do it my, and he actually did significantly better than, because he's, instead of trying to imitate someone else, he's going to do it like his way. Of course, make the little tweaks over time, but don't try to do it perfectly someone else. Like I think of even the last USPSA match that you and I did, where there's one stage where everyone decided to do this one way, and then Kyle, he decided to do his own way, and he actually ends up doing amazing on that stage. He was like, I don't care what everyone else is doing, I'm going to do it the way that I feel comfortable with and I feel confident to do. And he rocked it. I think he got what, like top five in that competition. Actually, I think he got top three in that
Yeah,
competition.
yeah. I think he ended up. Yeah, like yeah, it was way up there. And I mean, he's very good shooter. And that you mentioned the thing with Lucas Botkin, like he's a fantastic shooter, and people watch him. He's like, man, you're fast. But
Hmm.
he's like an A. I think, admittedly, he's like an A class USPSA shooter. Now, the type of shooting that he's doing is very different than USPSA. And if he were to
Yes.
focus like on USPSA, he'd easily be a master, right?
Oh yeah.
But again, it's a lot of those body mechanics. Man, I was watching some shooter the other day, and they were like floating through a stage, and they were taking shots at like half concealed targets,
Hmm.
at like speeds that at distance, at speeds that even up close I can't accelerate at. It's just it's impressive the amount of shooting like ability that people have gotten to just by the practice and using that diagnostic information.
Hmm. Exactly.
Um, anyway, we should probably keep moving on. Otherwise, we were going to
I
be.
agree. All that to say, cameras are great, but I did quickly look it up. So an Insta360 Go camera, the tiny little Go thing is like 1.2 ounces, whereas a GoPro 10, you're looking at 5.2 ounces.
Yeah,
So
that's a
it
significant
is
difference.
almost 5 times the weight. So
Plus, it's
that's
more
the main reason
aerodynamic.
why I went with the 360. One more time.
Plus, it's more aerodynamic.
It is more aerodynamic.
I'm just
Yes, of
kidding.
course. Well, it is, but it does have a smaller sensor, so it's not as crisp. I think it's like a 1440p instead of like the actual 4K that a GoPro can do, which eh, it works fine. It looks fine. As long as you have enough daylight, it looks great. So, all right, moving
Yeah.
on. So, Philip, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so actually, I the reason I had you go first, because I was looking at the items I'm going to talk about. I'm actually going to talk about them back to back because
Okay,
they're both kind of a long range shooting, so they kind of tie into each other. So I'll kind of hit
gotcha.
on them back to back just to kind of
So a
like
12 gauge shotgun.
tie them. Yeah, gee. Yeah, that's some technology for you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just shoot a double
eight,
barrel shotgun and take two warning shots in the air.
1800s technology.
Oh my goodness. All right, moving on.
All right, so one thing that has existed for a while, actually longer than I thought it existed for, is a chronograph.
Okay.
I didn't realize how long they were around for, and now I apologize 'cause I closed out that tab in my browser had the date and everything. They've been around since like forever. But the electronic chronograph, as we know today, has not existed for like historically an overly long amount of time. Right. And for those who don't know, the chronograph is a device that allows you to determine the velocity of a shot from, well, I guess velocity really of anything, but specifically we're talking
Hmm.
about today chronograph for firearms. Allows you to determine the speed or the velocity of the round as it leaves the firearm at the given point at which the chronograph like is measuring. So I have a chronograph, for example. It's an older style one that you shoot through, and it's like 10 to 15 yards out. You know, and so it determines the velocity at that point. There are a whole bunch of different styles. There's like the newest one, which is Garmin, which is everybody wants. A little more pricey, but you literally set up this little tiny thing and you point it like in the direction you're firing, and it picks up like the velocity. It's pretty cool.
That's crazy, man. Well, Garmin is great. Hey, Garmin, sponsor us. I love your watches.
Yeah, and actually, I was really surprised that a company like Garmin was like, "Hey, we're going to make a chronograph, electronic chronograph for firearms." I'm like, "Hey,
That's
good on you!"
crazy. I
Like,
know, right?
nice, because they didn't have to. They're probably not a huge market for them, and like they may get crap for, "Oh, you're making firearm stuff,"
Hmm. 500
but
bucks.
yeah, but they did one anyway. Like my chronograph, I think I spent like 120 on. This is a cheap one, but they're really accurate, and people are like selling all their other chronographs because it's much easier to use. Anyway, all that to be said, a chronograph, electronic chronograph, or any chronograph is designed to measure the velocity of a projectile as it leaves a firearm, in this case. So the question is, what do you do with that information? Like, what does that get you? Yes, it can tell you how
No
fast it's
idea.
going, but the most important thing that you get out of it is it's one of the components that's required to determine the trajectory of a bullet.
Hmm.
And why is that important? Well, if you are even a medium range to long range shooter, whether it's a hunter or it's a competition shooter or you're just a bench shooter, obviously bullets are not when they shoot, they do not shoot perfectly flat. Unfortunately, we suffer from something in earth called gravity and wind resistance. So those things are going to slow down the
And the
bullet as
rotation of the earth.
and the rotation of the earth when you really get out there. All those things are going to mess with the drop of your bullet. It's going to cause the bullet to drop over time.
Hmm.
And you can figure out the drop of your bullet pretty darn close by just having basic information like the velocity, the ballistic coefficient, which is like a whole bunch of mathematics that I don't understand, but that's typically provided by the bullet manufacturer anyway. There's an equation to get it. Look it up, and
So
if you want to
what
mess,
is ballistic coefficient for those who don't know, like myself?
it's basically how slippery the bullet is and how like impacted it is on like wind resistance, right?
Okay.
So the better. like the ballistic coefficient. Typically, it's a larger number. The further the bullet will go, like I should say the further it'll go because it depends on the velocity as well. But the more slippery
Hmm.
it is, the more it
Gotcha.
can like. So you have to again, you have to have velocity, which you can get out of your chronograph, the ballistic coefficient, which is typically figured out by a mathematical equation, but typically provided by the bullet manufacturer, and then the weight of the bullet. So which we measure typically in grains. Why that is the case, I do not know. I'm sure there's a reason behind it, and if somebody knows what it is, please let me know. But we measure bullet weight in grains. With those three things, you can figure out a rough like trajectory of your bullet, right? There's a few other things obviously that impact the bullet, wind at the time, but obviously we can't control that when you're trying to at least get your dope chart. You can control it when you're at the range and actually shooting. But a few other things to consider too are your obviously your zero range and then like your sight height off the top of your firearm are going to determine at which the bullet's going to drop. But the most important thing again, velocity, ballistic coefficient, and weight will get you the trajectory, and then you can determine at which point in time and distance, I guess, the bullet will be in its flight path before it hits
Hmm.
the dirt and is done. Right. So that's important because let's say that you want to shoot a target that's out at 100 yards, right? And you are zeroed at 100 yards. All you got to do is take your reticle and put the crosshairs like right on it where you're zeroed at, and you fire the round. And as long as you are do your job, the bullet is going to impact the target, right?
Hmm.
And but once you go past whatever your zero distance is, or even closer than what your zero distance is, that bullet is going to be at a different like uh height, I guess. I'm sure there's a proper term. Based on when again the distance that you have. So
Hmm.
by knowing this information, I can say I need to adjust my reticle either by using the like dialing the reticle with the turrets on the firearm, up or down based on needed. Or if you have a reticle that's like hash marks in it, you can use that as well too. Obviously not as precise as dialing. But again, so now with that data, I can say I want to hit a target at 200 yards. I know that I have to dial to this distance, or sorry, this distance. I have to dial properly on the knobs on my firearm in order to hit that target every time, right? So that's just one of the ways that you would use that, and the primary way to really figure it out is
Yeah.
how far you're going to shoot.
So for you, since I've noticed that you've used a chronograph for other purposes, like
That is true,
when for
actually.
reloading. So tell me about that because I know that you do it, but I don't really understand why. Why do you do that?
That's actually a great call out, Tyler, and one that I actually did not think about. So obviously, trajectory is one thing to figure out, but the other thing is to figure out something that we in USPSA call power factor.
Mm,
And power factor is based on the velocity of the bullet as well as the weight of the bullet.
okay.
And when you are shooting a sport like USPSA, they have scoring that's done in technically there's three ways that you can determine it. There's the ones people are saying about are minor and major power factor, and then there's actually like sub minor.
What?
So if yes, so if you must be shooting, if you're shooting a competition, you must be at least no matter what division you're in, you must be at least shooting minor power factor. And
Hmm.
if you are not shooting minor power factor and you're shooting below that, then you actually will be disqualified from the match. You can still shoot, but you're shooting for no score.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you are shooting in a division that takes minor and major, if you are not making major power factor, they'll bump you down to minor and your scoring changes. So in USPSA, if you're shooting major power factor, an A zone hit is 5 points, a C zone hit is 4 points, and then I forget it'll count shoot major. I forget if D is 2 points or 3 points. But if you're shooting in minor power factor, it's 5 points for A zone, 3 points for C zone, and then I think it's one for D zone.
Hmm.
So there's a significant difference in that, right? So the idea and concept behind that is if you're shooting major, typically you're dealing with more recoil. So in theory, it's a harder like round to recover from for your follow up shots.
Yeah.
Now, for people who are shooting open with compensators, and if they have the gun properly tuned, that gun will continue to shoot flat, and they'll have it because the compensator will make up for like, and sometimes the faster the bullet is going through, like the more the gun's able to keep it flat because the more it's compensating for that shot going through. Whereas, like, if it's not going quite as fast, the compensator may actually overcompensate. I don't know how common that is. Again, I don't shoot with a compensator. I don't shoot opening.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if
Yeah,
an
I don't
opening
think
shooter
I've
were to hop on here and be like, "Oh yeah, you can do this, this,
I don't
this,"
think I've
but
ever shot my pistol with the compensator before, or a compensated pistol before. I'm
yep.
gonna
And
try
the
it.
same,
I want to get one. I should get one. I keep telling myself
you
to
can
do
just,
it, but I don't.
just go ahead and shoot open, man.
Yeah. Well, I got limited optics now, man. All I cared about was the magwell. I was just too lazy to take it off every time since I carried
Mine's such a
one.
pain to do.
Yeah, mine's super easy. I just don't
Yep.
want to do it. I do remember going to USB to say I was about to start a stage and I realized like, oh, I still have a magwell on. So I like ran and took it right off. I had to borrow. I didn't even have the punch tools. I mean, all you need is a tiny little like stick or rod or whatever. You can stick the pin out, take it right off. So it worked out. But man, I was like, oh. So, but and
But
also, I think you've used a chronograph before to see the consistency of your rounds,
yeah,
correct?
that is also fair, and that is like when you are determining your velocity. Typically, what you'll do is you'll shoot a string like of rounds through your chronograph to determine what the standard deviation is between all of those shots, right?
Hmm.
And the idea is, and the other thing to consider too is not only are you looking for, I'm gonna get this wrong, but not only are you looking for the like, what is it, the median or the mean, whatever it is, like or the standard deviation, like whatever the, let's say you have a one shot that's like 10 and one that's 20, and then you're looking at 15 is like the standard deviation. Is that right, Tyler? Am I mathing that right?
I
I
have
feel
no
really
idea what
dumb all of a
standard
sudden.
deviation is, but that
I
would
don't,
be, well, that would be
is
the
it the
middle. I
median?
guess in that case would be, yes, the median, because that'd be in the middle, but at the same time, that would also be the mean because that's the average.
Right.
So, in that one specific example, you gave us both mean and median.
Yeah. And then so the other challenge is, though, that being said, is if you have a larger discrepancy, but yet, your rounds end up with a, like, in the end it's closer or whatever, because like you have one that was way outside the normal, right? But the next four out of your five shots were more normal, like
Yeah.
were closer to each other from a velocity perspective. Like, that may still even be a problem for you as well too. And a lot of reloaders, when they're reloading and trying to find the perfect reload for whatever firearm they're shooting to try to match the harmonics of the barrel,
Hmm.
like, they're going to go for primarily accuracy, but then part of that accuracy, especially over longer ranges, is also determining, um, like, again, that the deviation between the velocity of your shots, right?
Hmm.
So you're trying to also figure that out as well too. So that's important. But usually, what you're doing is taking the average of all those shots, and then you're taking that average is what you put into the ballistic calculator to determine what your trajectories are, and then I'll get
That
you
makes
close.
sense.
Get you
Hmm.
close.
All right.
So I do that, and then like, obviously there's a safety consideration there as well too. If I'm reloading a new round, and I know that if I have a round that's supposed to be, like, depending on the caliber, like if I have a 9 millimeter, I know that I'm supposed to be within, like, with this weight bullet, I'm supposed to be within this velocity. And if I go exceed that velocity, then I'm getting into plus P territory, or even plus P plus, or even into like really high pressures that could potentially destroy my firearm.
Mm.
So it's a safety check as well too. So if you're reloading and you're not using a chronograph, you're wrong. That's why I got a chronograph. Again, it's for
That
safety
makes
safety
sense.
purposes as well too. And a lot of the data
Yeah.
out there too is like, it's really good data. Like, I have a 125 grain 9 millimeter bullet. It's coated, and even, or whatever, in that guy, whatever coating it has on it, jacket coated, whatever, blah blah blah. I would put this much grain of powder in it based on somebody else had done the work in advance. Buying a book from Hornady or whoever. They say, hey, this is what you should put in to be able to have safe. This is what the velocity you should be getting out of it based on the barrel length, blah blah. So
Yeah.
you're
That makes
the
sense.
likelihood of going over, as long as you're not being dumb and you're measuring your powder properly, you'll be fine.
Yeah. That makes a lot.
Anyway, We talked a lot about math and stuff that I've completely forgot about, from median, mean, and standard deviation and all that stuff. But needless to say, chronograph is one of those things that if you continue to shoot a lot, especially if you're not shooting factory ammo, it's important to have. And even if you start shooting long range with factory ammo, it's important to have.
All right.
So
Well, so you said you had a two-parter for long range
yep. So
tech.
because the chronograph is a lot used for long range, the one thing I want to talk about, and this is a newer technology that's actually helps you save time at the range, right? Which is something technologies are supposed to do in our life, is help us save time, right? Is a lighted target indicator. And what I mean by that is when you, if you are shooting any kind of distance shooting and you're shooting at a steel target, you will be able to typically hear that target ring, right? If you're like 5.56 within 300 yards, you're going to hear the tink of the metal. Well, when you start getting out there, especially with shorter barrel rifles, or even like lighter weight calibers, or lighter weight bullets, it becomes more difficult, especially with hearing protection on, even if it's electronic, of hearing your
Mm-hmm.
shots. And if you can see your shot through your scope, fantastic. But sometimes you really get far out there, it's hard to tell, or you spotting scope or whatever. But one of the other technologies to help with that is a lighted target indicator that you attach to the steel target that you're shooting, so that when you hit the target, it actually lights up. So you know that you've hit your target immediately, right? Because even before you'll hear the report of it, because obviously light travels faster than sound. So it's one of those training aids, and we use it now. Like we went out and shot. I remember it was you and I and the rest of the 5K team, and we went out and shot. And I was trying to call your shots at 500 meters, and I could not. Like for the life of me, I'd catch like maybe a few
Uh-huh.
of them, and you're taking all these shots, and then we get down there, and there's more shots on target. Well, sometimes it's hard to see, especially because depending on the quality of your spotting scope, and
For sure.
even if it's good quality, like if there's a lot of mirage out there, sometimes it can be hard to see those kind of things. Well, this takes all the guesswork out of it, right? So it used to be that these were really pretty expensive. It was a couple $100 to get a lighted like target indicator, right? Which is prohibitive to buying. Like you get one maybe, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm out at the range. If I'm shooting at 500 meters, fantastic. But what about my target that's at 400 meters? I want to know if I hit that target immediately or closer. Well, fortunately, there is a uh, it's Caldwell, right, Tyler? I slipped my mind the name
I
of it.
love how you're asking me and you're the one
I don't
who
know that
owns it.
owns it, but like they
And
made.
yes, it is Caldwell.
Thank you. It's funny. I should second guess myself because I know that's what it is, because it's got the green box and everything. Caldwell
Follow
sells
your
their stuff.
gut, bro.
It's all green. Anyway, it's called the Caldwell Flashbang, and it's $30. This is what I paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
30
That's
bucks.
amazing.
It
We
uses
just
LED
shot it at.
lights.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
No, I was about to
Fantastic.
say,
Like,
well, yeah. Well, I was about to say, you got Cabela's, and Riz like, no, it wasn't Cabela's. It was that other sports store.
yeah, Jay's, I
But
think, up north.
Jay's, it was
Um,
Jay's, yeah.
yep, they
Mm-hmm.
had them in stock. Anyway, so lighted target indicator. It attaches to the back of the target with Velcro. You put the Velcro on the back of it, and then you obviously put Velcro on the other end, and you smash them together. And the Velcro is like it's some
It
quality Velcro.
is. It's
It's good stuff.
tough.
It's hard. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I go to pull it off after I'm done, I really got to crank on it to get it off there. I have not shot one off yet, like by hitting it and reverberating it off.
And
Anyway, so
it's
it lights.
actually been shot before,
It
too.
has been shot. So it is. It does light up. It's got a bank of like maybe 10 LEDs on the right hand side. When you hit it, it flashes, and then the flash, like the intensity of the flash drops over time. So if you do hit it with a follow up shot, you immediately get that bright light again. So you know you hit both your shots, which is really smart because if you, let's say you miss the initial flash, for whatever reason, you catch the follow up flashes pretty easy. Again, $30. It's actually, they designed it to be shot. The lights, because the light does hang around the side. Unfortunately, it doesn't use like a mirror or any kind of like fiber optics or whatever that can be shot. And somebody shot my target. I shoot man sized targets, and I usually attach it to the head box. And I say, people, don't aim for the head box, and obviously there's no guarantee, but aim for the body. And you hit it, it flashes. You hit the target. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Do you have anything to add about the flashing target, other than the fact that it's extremely bright? and don't look directly at it when you have it up close in your hand.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, it's really nice and really convenient to have because I believe your first time seeing that was at the Zombie Invitational, right? And around that time, was it the flashbang that they had, or
They
did the
use the
flashbang
more
come out
expensive
around?
one.
Yeah,
Yeah, yep,
but then the flashbang came out around that time, right?
right, yep,
So you got like, just like, dude, like I gotta get that too. It's like, man, then I remember you're raving all about it. We get to Jay's and you're like, dude, I wonder if they have it. We go around the corner. Lo and behold, there it was. I think you wanted to buy like three or four. Like, nope, just
yeah.
buy
I only bought
two.
two. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had two.
Well,
I had
you
two
only
steel
have two
targets,
steel
so
targets,
yep,
yeah, so there's really
yep,
no reason to get more than that. But all that said, it's really cool, it's really nice to have, and we've played around with it even just at 200 yards. It's really nice to be able to see it and then hear it, and then, of course,
right,
as we move out more, to know it's like, "Yep, we did it," especially when I think of the Wolverine 5K, the last time we did training for that, we were going back and forth between 200 and 300 meters,
yep,
and it was, like, high pace, high adrenaline. We're shooting and running. We're grabbing intel. So we're trying to figure. It's really nice to be able to see that we hit it. Then we can just go. We don't have to wait for
right.
the ding or like, hey, did we actually hit it or not? It's like, of course we did. It flashed. It flashed us. So
Yep. Again, technology is a training aid. It's
one hundred
fantastic,
percent.
and again, with like being living in a capitalistic society, somebody's going to find a cheaper way to do it than what used to be $200 in the past for the other product, and now it's like $30, right? And maybe somebody down the road is going to come out one for $20. We'll see.
Hmm. Exactly.
Sweet, Tyler. What do you have left on your list here?
Yeah. So last on my list is dry fire tools. So it's not necessarily a range tech, but it's very much a firearms tech because, well, the funny thing with dry fire, I know it can be, I don't know, I don't think it's controversial, and yet people say that it is. And I think we referenced this at previous episodes how you have some of these operators and even police officers who basically say, do not dry fire
Kilt in the streets,
because
bro.
what's up?
You'll get kilt in the streets.
Yeah, exactly, because they believe that because of that muscle memory, you're going to shoot, rack, which funny enough, I have seen videos of guys doing that at the range, and you can clearly see the bullet coming right out of
Oh
the
yeah,
ejection form. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Or the slide. I'm like, bro. I'm like, all right, no, his money. I don't care. Whatever, his life. But dry fire is important. I am the shooter that I am today because of dry fire. I think of Brent, who is a better pistol shooter. He's a better shooter than I am. How I know he dry fires significantly. And for him, the big difference between his dry fire and my dry fire is for the longest time, I just did regular dry fire, which works phenomenal. But he has multiple different dry fire tools. I think of one where you have, he doesn't have it, but some people, if you want to, I guess I'll kind of go from bottom up price wise. You have, I mean, you have dry fire mags where they're like 90 bucks, 100 bucks, where you can put this dry fire mag inside your pistol, and your very first pull is going to be really heavy because you're pulling both your actual trigger and the dry fire mag itself. But after that, once you reset it, it simulates a trigger. It's not your trigger, but you are able to put different springs on there and put different weights. And I have a dry fire mag. It's okay. I I want to be able to pull my own personal trigger because I can definitely feel the difference.
right.
So that's my personal preference. But 100 bucks, why not? Great tool, can't complain. And then we kind of move up to a Mantis. They have a bunch of different, my goodness, they have tons of different options. They have like their X2, X3, X10, Laser Academy. And I don't have any of the pistol stuff, but I have friends who have, and they rave about it, especially the X10, where you're able to do, you can put either mount it to the rail of your gun or mount it to the bottom if like a mag you can add an adapter and you're able to dry fire with it, you're able to live fire with it. They analyze your draws, and it's just they have different. drills that you can do. It's really cool because now you can see, like, hey, how am I breaking my shot? How is my draw? It really analyzes everything for you, and I feel like that's making you a better shooter, and you're able to see, like, hey, I think it humbles you. It really does. Because you're like, huh, maybe I'm not as good as a shooter as I really am. Because now it's actually giving you that objective score. So you know, it's like, okay, I'm constantly getting like 60, 70 points. And when really I want to be in like the 80, 90, maybe even like high 90s to 100 for some of my shots. And kind of going back to that, we have the Blackbeard, which is for their AR, which I think is such a cool tool where you take out your bolt carrier and you put in the Mantis Blackbeard's bolt carrier, and then it actually has a mag that's basically the battery. You put it in, and now you're able to fire, dry fire. It shoots a visible laser and it resets your AR trigger. And I think personally, I am a better pistol shooter than I'm an AR shooter because I'm more comfortable with the pistol. But I now that I have this dry fire tool, I'm able to play around more with my rifle and actually have fun with it. And I did pay a little extra for the Bluetooth version where it's a Blackbeard X and it syncs with my phone and it tells me what I'm doing. I'm able to analyze my shots and analyze how I'm doing. So all that to say, dry fire is important, man. I think it's probably the best training you can do, and you can go
Well,
from free to a lot of money. So
yeah, you forgot about the cool fire, bro.
I did. As I was talking, the Mo said, "Well," I'm like, "I'm bringing the cool fire trainer up."
Yeah, that is to me, that's probably the coolest dry fire tool or
I
cool
think
fire
so
tool.
too. Yeah. So for those who don't know, the cool fire trainer, it is a it's a dry fire tool for your pistol. It is pricey.
Yeah,
You
it's like
you are
500.
Yeah, you're looking at like 400 or 500. For me, it'll probably be more like $600
Mm,
because what it is you have a cool fire. Basically, you're shooting CO2 gas. That's what you're doing. But you get to use your gun. You will replace your barrel with the cool fire barrel, and then you put in, and then, yeah, then you can put a laser on top of it. And basically, you pull your trigger and it reciprocates your slide. Of course, it's not the same recoil as a regular gun would be,
right.
but you're able to shoot multiple times your trigger and it reciprocates your slide. And CO2 is cheap. You can either get the paintball canister or the soda canister. For me, I don't have it yet, but Brent and Daryl have it and they love it. I do plan on getting this pretty soon. I've been doing a lot of babysitting jobs and dog sitting jobs. It's actually kind of funny. I'm like, it's kind of paying for it. It's actually really hilarious. Thanks, Phil.
No problem, man.
So, so all that to say, like, it's a really cool tool, and now I'm really able to practice. And eventually, I probably will end up getting a Mantis X for my pistol as well, so I can really see how I'm doing live fire, dry fire, because I just like analytics. I like to be able to just see how I'm doing and see it objectively, just like how I spoke about last week when it comes to the shot timers. I like numbers. I don't love numbers, but I like it. I like to see it. And I like to see progress. So, and it's cool because with the like a black or sorry, with the mantis, it all stays in the app and you can see your history versus like a shot timer. I have to write it down if I want to keep track.
Right.
So unless I have the Bluetooth one, which I think that you can kind of record that and keep that history. Oh man, that means more money I'm gonna spend later. All right, moving on from that. So all let's say dry fire, it's good for you. It's great. I don't Ammo's expensive. Thankfully ammo's going down, but why waste money?
Yeah, and there's a lot of like, and obviously you can do reps and dry fire at the range, but
Yes.
there's a lot of like reps that you can just do at home
Hmm.
that of not even necessarily like, trigger slapping, but like the actual like from drawing, reloads, those kind of things that make a lot more sense to do from home versus doing, like at the range. I mean, you can if you want. That's fine. You can practice reloads there, but you can also do that at home. Make a trip.
It's true. I
Yep.
Yeah, I practice a lot of reloads and a lot of draws, dry fire, and I
Yep.
consider myself a pretty fast at both. I mean, I
Yeah.
average probably a one on a really good day. I could probably get a 1 second draw, maybe probably a 1-1. Like if I take my time, it's like a 1-3. So
Yeah.
from concealment. So,
But yeah.
but that's dry
Draws,
fire.
reloads, target transition. Those are
Yes.
all things that you can practice like pretty easily at home. Something I wish I had more time to do.
Yeah.
Part of having way too many hobbies in the family. I don't get as much time to do
Yeah.
it. Like it's very like hit or miss for me. I don't know, making excuses.
Yeah. I haven't dry
But
fired in a while, so I can't. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm it's this is for me too. It's a good reminder. It's like, hey, Tyler, remember how you keep talking about how important dry fire is? When was the last time you did it? I'm like, it's been a little
I
bit for me.
know.
I feel
Yep,
like I've been living out of a suitcase recently, so
yep,
once
yep.
I'm done with my travels, I can start doing it again. I probably now that I think about it, I'm no, I gotta get my plane ticket first. Never mind. But
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of it too is like even with a dry fire mag, it makes dry firing a lot more enjoyable because you're not always racking the slide
yes,
like over and over and over,
yes,
right? Whereas like, and it's not the right, it's the exact same trigger like we talked about, but it makes it more interesting. But the cool fire, I think for me, that just makes it fun. Like, who does it?
yeah,
Like, part of the cool part of shooting a gun is feeling the reciprocation, especially a pistol, obviously, with the reciprocation of the slide, is feeling the reciprocation of the slide and being able to kind of like almost like fire your gun, and even with the laser on there too, like in your own
yeah.
house. I mean, how cool is that? And it makes like a cool like poop 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 noise, so it's
That's
like you're
true.
shooting suppressed without the suppressor.
Yeah, and you
So
don't
there's a
need
lot
to
to be
get the
said.
laser either if you
No,
want to save
no,
money.
yep, yep.
The laser's
You
extra.
always add on later. So I don't know.
Exactly.
It's one of those things where like I should just drop the money on. I have enough other toys too that I should be. We'll see.
It's
We'll put on
worth it.
there. I
I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's worth it because I think of the amount of let's equate the amount of reps that you're going to shoot dry versus live. I think of even my Blackbeard X. My first week that I got it, I think I shot I dry fired 1,000 times, like 1,000 trigger pulls in
Wow.
like the first week.
Yep.
Think about that. Like I'm average at the time, I was probably paying about 55. Let's just round up. I'll even round down, just make it sweet. 50 cents a round, thousand times. That's a lot of money. What was that 500 bucks right there?
Yeah.
So
And, and one of the biggest like stories in and he says this. I have no reason to not believe him, but Ben Stoker, like he made
mm,
master on like I think 2,000 rounds or 2,000, 3,000 rounds, and dry fire. So,
that's amazing. Wow.
but he's also a freak of nature when it comes to like uh, it's natural skill as well too, helps a lot with that. But and a lot of freaking work. So
Yeah,
anyway, you
exactly.
too can be Ben Stoker if you want.
Say that again.
I said you too can be Ben Stoker if you want.
Oh gosh,
Just by
I
practicing.
like blanked out. You said, I'm like, what?
That's all good. Anyway, so yeah, any more thoughts on dry fire, Tyler?
Uh, I think I said it all. I mean, I just remember there's another dry fire tool. It's a cert gun.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yep.
it's a red gun you can buy that shoots a laser. That's all it is. But it's another option. There's so many dry fire tools out there. It's worth it. You can go once again. You can go all the way from free to, I mean, all not even just $600. I think of what was it? You've got the VR headset
Yes,
stuff
I
now,
was just gonna bring that
man.
up. I was just gonna bring that up because
Yeah, go for
honestly,
it.
ironically, that actually may be cheaper than getting the cool fire stuff because
That's
you can get it. I think
hilarious.
you can get like a VR headset for like a nice one for $300. Could be wrong.
Wow.
Don't correct me on that. But then you
I
got
have
to get
no
like
idea.
the program, and you got to get like there's like a gun that the like handheld VR joysticks, for lack of a better term. Somebody will correct me on it. say there's something else. But yeah, you can
Hmm.
set it up, and there's a whole program set up for dry firing that'll create stages for you and everything. And apparently, it's pretty cool. And you have a gun, a pistol that you can use. Obviously, it makes it difficult for doing things like drawing from a holster because having the controllers attached to it makes it like adds weight to it, which is nice because then it feels more like a bulky firearm. But also the way that it's attached to it, it makes it like when you're holding it and firing it, it's normal and it feels like a pistol. But with all the other stuff that's on there, it like adds a lot of bulk to it that you would not normally have in a pistol.
Hmm.
But you can get actual like experience shooting a like course of fire within your house
Hmm.
that you can't. I mean, I guess you could do with like a cool fire, but this will give you like like stats and everything. Now it's VR and as good as VR has gotten, and I'll tell you, it is good. I play Half-Life Alex, so I got time behind a virtual gun. Um, but it'll never be as precise as like a laser out of your pistol, right? It'll be
Oh,
close.
of
It's really
course.
good, like because it uses a lot of in order to track it. There's a few ways that it uses to track where you're at, right? Like
Hmm.
gyroscopes and like obviously using the different tools within the headset to track where the handsets are at. That's actually primarily how it does it, but
Yeah.
it's really good. It is very good. Like I will say from my experience with playing Half-Life Alex, it does simulate. But again, there's more money. It costs, and then some
Hmm.
people get sick. There's also nausea as well from people that use VR. Not everybody's like inclined as well to use it. There's some tricks and tips like putting a fan out to help cool you down and help you ground yourself in reality to where you're actually facing. And then like using C bands, stuff that helps you with like seasickness, Dramamine, those kind of things can help you defeat that.
Yeah.
But then it's just a lot more things to get set up.
You know what else I just realized too, or rather, what I just thought about?
What's that?
So, for me, having a Mantis X on my AR, because I zero my AR at 50 yards. So it's actually really nice that if I zero my Mantis pretty close to my regular zero, I'm able to see my holds.
Yeah, interesting. Because you can
So
control that. You can control the laser and where it's like aiming, right? When you put it set.
I can adjust the laser. I can adjust a zero on it, and I actually
That's sweet.
don't need to take it out of the gun. So they keep it exposed on purpose, so I'm able to adjust
Mm-hmm.
my elevation and my windage.
Nice.
So it gives me a general idea of my holds. Granted, you're only looking at a couple inches, but
Right.
when you're in a hostage situation, that matters.
Yeah.
So,
And we all
mhm.
have been taught that there will be a point in your life where you will have to take a shot, and
Yeah,
you're gonna land it perfectly as long as you're the hero of the story.
yeah, I know, right? Thanks, movies. So, but it's the little things like that. So now I'm able to remind myself that's right. Remember my holds, remember important stuff, just the
Mm-hmm.
little details like that. Once
Hmm.
again, it's like, I think, did we talk, was it this where we talked about how, no, I don't think it was, but either way, like having that plan, having that idea of like, okay, now I'm going to be in a situation where I have high adrenaline. If I don't have a plan or at least an idea, my adrenaline's going to take over and I might even get stuck between fight, flight, and freeze. So at least have a plan, have an idea of what's going to happen, and that'll help out a lot. So
Hmm.
that's all I got for dry fire. Do you have any other closing thoughts or ideas?
Nah, bro, I'm
So,
good.
what's your dad advice then?
Ah, crap. I knew you were gonna ask me that.
Bro, we do this almost every episode.
All right. So, dad advice for the week is to obviously life will always throw curveballs at you. You will get stuff that will get you down. You're always going to second guess yourself on things. But find those people around you who are going to lift you up and not tear you
Mm-hmm.
down. And I'm talking like it's one thing to like joke around and like be like, oh, hey, I can outshoot you. My draws are better. Blah blah blah. You're a terrible shooter. All that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. It's all joking, right? But it's like when it really comes down to it, find those who are going to lift you up. If somebody is going to, it depends what they say to your face and what they say behind your back. If those two things line up, then you probably have a pretty good friend. unless they're
Hmm.
both bad, in which case you have an enemy.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I'd rather someone be like that than be two-faced.
Yeah, and I honestly like. I know we talk about this a lot with relationships in you're listening to a podcast, but spend time with those people and get to know them better because you never know when you might need them and they might need you. And I will tell you, if you are there for them, not only will you cement that relationship, whether it's a friendship or it's a spouse, um,
Hmm.
when the reverse happens, like they're going to be there for you as well too. And again,
Hmm.
and don't be afraid to ask for help either.
Oh,
That's the other
so
thing,
true.
is, like, most people that wanna help, like, if you're a good friend, they're inclined to help. So, ask to help, unless it's moving, in which case I have a bad back. Please don't ask me to help.
It's
No,
like
actually, the
John.
back I joke, but the back has actually been significantly better lately. I made a bunch of changes to my lifestyle and the way that I do certain things, and it's been
That's great,
fantastic, and
man.
I'm
Good.
like I'm like, "Dude, I can start doing stuff that I've never done before again," and I'm not trying to jinx it or anything, but I am also 40, so I'm sure I'll find another way to
Yeah.
mess myself up.
Well, it's funny because you've got guys like John Lovell, who is 40 as well, retired Ranger, and yet he talks about like, bro, we're in our 40s. We don't ask each other to help move. You don't do the whole ask to help move and we'll pay
Yeah,
you
and you pay
pizza at
for
the
that.
end. Hire movers. You're 40. Get movers.
Yes.
And for me, I'm in my late 20s now.
Yeah,
Wow.
you are.
Yeah,
Alright,
it's
what what's your late 20s advice, Tyler?
always be learning and improving yourself. Like Philip was talking about, yeah, setbacks happen, curveballs come, but you can use those times to grow and to learn and to better yourself and to help others. Read a book, read
Yeah,
just even a page a day, man. A page a day is better than nothing. Because think about that, if you read a page a day for a year, you read a book. You read a 300-page book,
yeah,
365 or 365 and a quarter, I guess. Oh, this year would be 366 because leap year or
yeah,
something. Always be learning. So you'll never know how it can help you or even help others one day.
yeah. It's good advice, man. The other thing I'll say too, and close it out on this, eat less fried food. Eat more grilled food.
As we had fried chicken for lunch today.
We did have fried chicken for lunch today. But it was my first time this week having fried food.
Ooh. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
bro.
feel like I have not been eating well the past
Well,
month.
you've also been living out of a suitcase, so
I really have. It's been like, ooh. But I mean, I am leaving for a third world country in the next few hours. So
yeah. Well,
I
you're gonna
probably won't
be
be eating
yep.
fried food very much.
No,
So
no. All right. Well, again, we thank everybody for joining us. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and comment. Again, if you guys comment on a review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it on air, and it will be hopefully hilarious for you. And again, follow us on Instagram and share with your friends if you think they would find this useful. We like making these podcasts. We hope that it's good information for everyone. And again, if it's something that you found valuable, let us know. Tyler, anything else to close us out with?
we should totally like find a way, whether it's like a website or a form, where people can submit their questions. We got to
Yeah,
do that, man.
I think I'll set up at some point like a Telegram or a Signal group or something like that for people to submit questions. So
Something as simple as like a Google form or some type of online form, even if they
yeah,
want to whether they want to stay anonymous or not. But this way, we can get it in, and that'd be cool. We could have a. I would love to do a Q&A episode one day, or even
yeah,
like a Q&A section of the podcast once we start getting more Q&As.
yep. I'm gonna submit a question on how you keep your hair so nice.
Wow. Okay. Do you actually want to know, or was that a
No,
joke?
no, I'm not being serious. All right, we'll talk about it later. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
All right. See you, everyone. Bye.